shows. Available.
Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. For today's fourth segment of the show, we are going to make another debut of a sport with the WNBA, specifically speaking of the Rookie of the Year debate between number 1 pick and number 2 pick, Caitlin Clark and Cameron Brink. Obviously, two fantastic college players making a rocky transition to the WNBA. But let's start off with Caitlin Clark because of the fact that she has had such an illustrious career in college at the University of Iowa, over 3,000 point scores. Now with the Indiana Fever, a team obviously who is not that good in the WNBA. Finding out the hard way, the transition to the WNBA is not as easy as it looks, but still, she is sitting pretty as the favorite for the Rookie of the Year debate over Cameron Brink right now at minus 650 according to ESPN BET. But let's look at her stats this season because they tell a story that she has the traits and the capabilities to be one of the dominant point guards in this league, but she just needs to acclimate to the league because this obviously is her rookie season. So much was expected of her. But right now, she's not where she wants to be. She's only shooting 37.1% from the field, averaging 15.4 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, 6.3 assists. So you can see the talent is there, but it's not translating to team success. Obviously, the Fever only 1-8. She did have a solid game against the Sparks team that Cameron Brink plays for on Tuesday. Had 30 points there, but it's a matter of translating her game from the college level to the WNBA for Caitlin Clark, and I think that she is a deserved favorite for the Rookie of the Year award just based on the fact that they value points more than anything in that kind of race. So I do think she is the favorite, but let's talk about Cameron Brink, a completely different kind of player profile. Only 3 points in their meeting on Tuesday of this week, and 1 of 5 field goals. However, Cameron Brink, while not the biggest point scorer, obviously she's not a point guard and expected to rally this team around her talents. She leads the league in blocks per game. She obviously takes fewer field goals than Caitlin Clark, but she still has 10.8 points per game, not too bad for a center in the WNBA. But let's talk about how this race matches up with, say, other races that we've seen in Rookie of the Year conversations. These are just two completely different players. You have Caitlin Clark, a player who has so much pressure put on her back to kind of elevate this Indiana Fever team that has been lacking a superstar for quite some time, and it's showing in her style of play, but she still is this very talented player who, if given the assets and the tools to elevate the Fever like she did with the University of Iowa in college, she could be one of the phases of the league in the next decade or so. Whereas Cameron Brink is more of a defensive-minded player. She's not a point scorer. She's going to get you the rim protection. She's going to get you blocks. She's going to get you paint dominance. Now, I think that ultimately Caitlin Clark is the safest bet for this kind of award because of the fact that you want a high-profile point guard, shooting guard kind of player to win an award. She's going to get her points. She's going to find her way with the Indiana Fever eventually. They are going to win some games this year. They're not necessarily going to win a lot of games. They're not by a long stretch a playoff team by any means, in my opinion. But she is going to find her way. I just think she needs time. Obviously, people are just going to put more and more pressure on her shoulders as the Fever lose more and more games. But she's proving, what with her performances these past couple of weeks, that she has it in her to perform at a high level. Whereas Cameron Brink, not much is expected of her for a Sparks team that also is in kind of a transition but does have better players than Cameron Brink to build around. They have De'Erica Hamby, they have Kia Nurse, two solid players in their squad, two foundational players that Cameron Brink at this current moment is not better than, is not expected to be better than, but she still is in this conversation, mainly due to the fact that there aren't that many solid defensive rookie of the year candidates right now in this WNBA league. And so Cameron Brink, yes, she's not averaging as many points as Caitlin Clark, but that's to be expected. Cameron Brink is not that kind of player. This is just such a weird debate when we debate a point guard who had such a fantastic career in college against a center who had a similar trajectory to this point guard, but is not expected to score as many points as her. And so, looking at this debate, while Caitlin Clark is a safe bet, Cameron Brink proves to be the more intriguing option here. Because while points are certainly very important in the league, and obviously having a good point guard matters, defense also matters as well. And Cameron Brink is proving to be one of the best defensive players in the WNBA right now. So ultimately, I do think Caitlin Clark should and will win this award. I just think that when the pressure is off her, when the dust settles, and she finally gets her flowers for fighting her way through this season, a tough season for the Indiana Fever and herself, I think that people will really appreciate her more for what she did. But Cameron Brink, you can't look past the fact that she is such an athletic player. Defensively, and in terms of her paint presence, her rim protection, she also is an intriguing option. But that should just about do it for this segment. I was really excited to talk about this kind of interesting debate where you have a point guard and center, and it gets really intriguing whether you value offense or defense more. But coming up in our last segment of today's show, we talk about the ass whooping that the Mavs gave the Wolves to get into the finals of the NBA. We recap the fantasy points that these players had, and that will just about finish out our show. We will be right back for that segment.